sometimes when an author writes a book, they'll go around and do a book tour. And often they'll come to big tech companies, big companies like Microsoft, and present to the group live. Now, when I got the opportunity to interview Dave Barry in person for Microsoft's internal Outside In lecture series, I jumped at it. I grew up reading Dave Barry. I sat with my dad on a Sunday afternoon reading the Oregonian because Dave was a syndicated humor columnist. And now he's got a new book out called Class Clown, the Memoirs of a Professional Wiseass. So what you're about to hear is that audio from my opportunity to interview Dave in person at Microsoft at our internal lecture series. And this audio is being shared with the permission and with the blessing of the folks at Outside In. So big thanks to them. Enjoy, Dave Barry. All right. Hey, friends.
Hi.
How are you doing? Hi, Dave Barry.
Hey.
So, my friends, today I have the immense pleasure. That's a little over the top. I have the pleasure.
It's not that immense.
I wouldn't say immense. Yeah. I have the kind of middling pleasure to speak with a man
I'm
who...
not happy either.
No, he's been quite mean, mostly, I would say. I have the pleasure of speaking with a man whose job title might as well be the national treasure of sarcasm. He is a Pulitzer Prize winning humorist, best-selling author, longtime Miami Herald columnist whose work kept generations laughing. Generation, singular.
No, many at this point.
Many?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of generations.
A lot of generations? More than one.
A lot of people that are dead now, in fact.
Yeah. Number of corpses.
Yeah. Well, they're not laughing now, but
no, they were hilarious. They were laughing before.
That was killing them.
Yeah, well, literally. And he's here to talk about his new book, Class Clown, the Memoirs of a Professional Wiseass. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Well, not yet, but
we'll see how it goes.
It'll get more fun at some point.
Feel it out. Feel it out. It could go either way.
Yeah.
Honestly. All right. So, listen. In 1986, you started syndicating, and then in 1988, you won the Pulitzer Prize. What is it like to peak so early?
Yeah, it's been pretty much downhill. When did you win your Pulitzer Prize, Scott? No, it was a long time ago. But can I tell my Pulitzer Prize story?
I would love it if you tell your Pulitzer Prize.
So, first of all, this is not false modesty. I did not expect to win a Pulitzer Prize. The category I won in is called Distinguished Commentary, which nobody has ever accused me of being distinguished. Am I right? I write booger jokes. So anyway, I didn't know that I had won, but the Miami Herald, where I worked, did know. They got informed a couple hours ahead of time, and so they wanted to surprise me. But the thing is, I almost never went into the office. And that day, I was going to go to Key West with my son Rob. I live in Miami, and he loved to go to Key West because we used to I'd rent a motorbike, and he would sit on the back, and we'd ride all around the island. And it was one of his favorite things. One of my favorite things to do. We did that. So he was very excited. We're going to Key West, and I get a call at home from my editor at the Herald saying, "You have to come in for a meeting at noon." And I said, I can't. I'm going to Key West. No, the editors insist you have to be here. So okay. So Rob and I go into the Miami Herald, and as we come in, the whole newsroom is filled with people in anticipation of the announcement. And two of Herald employees were going to win Pulitzers that day, me and a photographer named Michael Ducille. But I didn't know. I'm saying to Rob, "Oh, this is cool. They're going to announce the Pulitzers. You get to see." And just before the announcement, an editor who was not aware that it was supposed to be a surprise comes up to me and goes, "Congratulations." So at that moment, I realized two things. One is I'm about to win a Pulitzer Prize, and the other is we're not going to Key West. So I looked down to Rob, and I said, "Rob, I'm really sorry. We're not going to go to Key West today." And his face just fell because he'd really been looking forward to it. And I said, "But I'll buy you a Nintendo," because he was really hot to get this particular Nintendo game. And he goes, "Really?" And I go, "Yeah." And he jumps up, he puts his arm around, big hug, and they announce that I've won a Pulitzer Prize. And they take my picture at that moment. So the next day, the front page of the Herald was, Herald wins 2 Pulitzers. And there's a picture of Michael DeSeal, the photographer, being congratulated by his colleagues, and a picture of me with my son like this, with this huge smile. And everybody said, the best part about it, Dave, was how happy Rob was that you won a Pulitzer Prize. And the fact is, he had no idea that I'd won a Pulitzer Prize. But just to complete the circle there, Rob is now... There's the picture. Yeah, it's in the book.
He's leapt onto you.
He's jumped up. He's never been happier in his whole life. Rob is now 44 years old and has kids of his own, and he's an editor at the Wall Street Journal, where he runs a data reporting, data-assisted investigative reporting team, and he has won Pulitzer Prize, his team. So there you go. Yeah. Don't flood me. He didn't do that by following in my footsteps, I'll tell you that. Like, he deals in actual information, whereas I deal in lies. So,
when you have a Pulitzer Prize, do you keep it on a shelf? Is it in a drawer? Is it in the kitchen?
My wife has it because I lost it once. So it just looks like a junior high school diploma. I used to worry that they would come around and say, "You claim you won a Pulitzer Prize, Mr. Barry. Where is it?"
I thought it was a medal and it has things on it.
No, there's no medal.
No physical?
Oh, maybe there's a medal. They didn't give me a medal.
Oh, no.
I should get my medal from them. No.
Oh.
It's not that impressive. And really, just a tip for anybody who's interested. If you just go around saying you won a Pulitzer Prize, eventually it will be in Wikipedia that you did, even if you didn't. Nobody ever checks to see who won Pulitzer Prizes. So you don't even know that I chose to check. You just told these people I won, and the only reason you're saying is you read it in this book.
Pulitzer Prize in the book.
Anybody can say that. Anybody. It's a free country. That's just a little journalism tip.
Interesting. I'm going to go and do a bit of a deep cut.
Okay.
I'm going to just do the thing that you're supposed to do when you're selling a book, is I'm going to read a passage.
Okay.
This is a very important passage that says mostly what you do on book tours is talk about the book you're trying to sell. And you do many interviews in which you say the same things over and over, like telling a story about your son and the Nintendo, trying to sound enthusiastic, even though deep down inside you start to hate your book. Sometimes the people interviewing you have read your book, but more often than not, they have not. We had only met for a few minutes before you checked me.
I accuse you of
You
not.
accused me of not having read your book.
I've been on so many book tours. I've been writing books forever, and I've been on many, many book tours. And very often, no, Scott actually did read the book. Even though he's from Oregon, he read the book all the way through. See, I just figured out that that's the thing you can do here. That joke would not go over in Miami, where I live. I'd go, why does Oregon have to do with anything? But anyway, here apparently it's a big deal. So,
Florida man does read.
I have been on so many book tours, and you do a lot of interviews. Like, there used to be a lot of local TV news shows and stuff, or morning radio shows, whatever. And they don't have time to read your book. Some of them never read any book. They just and you just get used to soldiering through. But I had I have to tell you 2 stories about book tours. One, I was this is long ago. I was at a book event and a dinner and one of the other authors there was a guy named David McCullough, who was a great historian, wonderful writer of popular history books. And we were talking about like being interviewed by people who haven't read your book or aren't familiar with your work. And he had the best story. This is in the 70s, like 1976 or so, and he was promoting a book called The Path Between the Seas, which was about the building of the Panama Canal. And it's actually a wonderful book. And he's on a local morning TV show, and the guy interviewing him was this real kind of like Ken Doll kind of guy reading the questions off the teleprompter, who clearly had not read the book and didn't know who David was. And he goes, and the big issue was then, should the United States give the Panama Canal back to Panama? Not give it back, but give it to Panama. And that was a big controversial issue. So the guy reading the teleprompter says, well, Mr. McCullough, should the Panama Canal be turned over to the Republic of Panama? And David's answer was, well, in a sense, I think it doesn't matter. I think in a sense, the Panama Canal will always be American territory, like Normandy Beach. And the guy looks really puzzled and he goes, who is Normandy Beach? So that's one. The other one is like, you'll do anything on a book tour to promote your book. Like, I don't know why I'm here. But my schedule, I'm happy to be here. You people seem like nice people. He's okay. But you just basically go where you're told to go and do what you're told to do if you're on a book tour. So I was on a book tour, this is like in the mid-90s, and I was in St. Louis. And I was on a hotel in St. Louis, and I get this urgent call from my publicist who says, the Oprah show is trying to get in touch with you about being on the show tomorrow. So call this number. It's like, we were all very excited because being on Oprah was a very big deal. If you're an author, you want to be on Oprah. So I call the Oprah producer, and she says, okay, we're doing a show tomorrow on called Things We Do in Secret, where we're going to have the panelists, we're thinking about maybe having you as a panelist. Panelists are going to confess to something they've done that they're ashamed of, and then we're going to make it right on the air. We're going to correct whatever the wrong was. And so do you have something like that? And I'm like, I would have confessed to the Kennedy assassination. You know, I want to get on Oprah, you know? So I did think of something, which was a few years earlier, I'd been in a Hyatt hotel, and there was a sign in the bathroom, like a plastic tent-like sign that said, our guest towels are 100% cotton. Should you wish to purchase a set, they are available in our gift store for $75. Should you prefer the set to take the set already in your room, that amount will automatically be added to your bill, which is their way of nicely saying, if you steal our towels, we're going to charge you $75. So I stole the sign. And I took it home, and we put it in our guest bathroom. And this is true. And we had it for a couple of years, and everybody thought it was very funny. So I told the Oprah producer that story, and she goes, that's perfect. That's perfect. You'll come in tomorrow, you come to the show, you're going to tell that story to Oprah, and then on the air, you're going to drop the sign in a box. We'll have a give back box on the set, and then we'll get it back to the Hyatt Hotel people. So this is perfect. It's like, yeah, great. So the problem there is, I'm in St. Louis, the show is the next day in Chicago, but the sign is in Coral Gables, Florida, where I live. So I called my wife and said, you got to get the sign to Federal Express immediately. I don't care what it costs. You have to get it tonight tomorrow morning at the latest to the Oprah show in Chicago. Then she calls me back and says, well, they took it and I paid them, but they can't promise it. It's too late to promise. It's like, I'm thinking, oh man, I'm so screwed here. If I don't get the sign, then I'm not going to be on Oprah. So then I realized something. I was staying at a Hyatt hotel in St. Louis. So I stole another sign. They didn't have the original sign, but they had a no smoking sign. So I thought, nobody's going to know, and I'll just, grab it out of my pocket and throw it in the box. Well, fortunately, the correct sign made it in time, so I could. But my point here is that because I'm on a book tour, I'm willing to steal again and lie to Oprah to promote my book. So we have no ethics at all in this business, none.
I appreciate your enthusiasm.
So I'm willing to sit here with this guy. It's nothing. Yep.
You wrote a book called Dave Barry in Cyberspace.
Yes.
In 96.
Yes.
Do you still know how to use a computer?
Well, yeah. I mean, to write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you said, though, that you are in a mixed marriage.
Yeah.
And as someone who's in a mixed marriage myself, I find this challenging. So your wife uses Windows.
She's a Windows.
And you don't.
I'm an Apple.
How do you... is she also like a green bubble person?
No, she's blue.
Oh, goodness. Thank you. That's a nice thing, because we don't need any more green bubble people in our lives.
There, she's got the book.
Hey, is that Dave Barry in Cyberspace?
Yes, you even signed it.
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness.
See that? What? I was on a book. Where were you when? What books? Where was I when?
University bookstore.
University. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
That's fantastic. So in that context,
I was a Windows guy then. In fact, I sing the praises of Windows in that book.
In that book, Windows 95.
That's right. I bought all of them.
Yeah.
All of them. Windows gluten-free. I bought them all.
Yeah. What eventually broke you?
I don't remember. Oh, it was, because making my phone and my computer talk better.
Yeah.
That was what it was. Also, no, that was it.
Yeah, just making them talk to each other.
Yeah. God, why are we doing this? This is not, why are you making me confess like this?
Because we brought you into the belly of the beast.
Okay. All right.
And you get a surface, and you get a surface.
Yeah.
No. I just thought that was an important thing to call out because I have found that
I do use Microsoft Word all the time.
all right, we'll allow
I probably have typed more words on Microsoft Word than anybody else in the world. No, that's probably not true, but I'm going to say.
No, but you're willing to lie to sell a book at this point.
Yeah.
But you had said, though, in your you also have a Substack, so you can subscribe to Dave's Substack, and he had a post called Stupidification.
Yeah.
And in Stupidification, you felt like reliance on technology is eroding our ability to like talk, spell, do grammar, things like that. Do you use spell check?
No, I'm a very good speller. Just try me. Go ahead.
Stupidification.
You know how to spell that.
Yeah. So it's fun to joke about, but do you think that there's a larger concern about using an AI, but computers? Does it make us better, or does it make us dumber?
Well, I don't think computers are making us dumber. I don't.
Just checking.
I think they're very useful tools. This is a pretty serious question.
No, we'll find a joke.
Okay. Where?
I can keep throwing you softballs.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was funny.
Okay, good. Well, then
okay.
tell me
It
why.
only matters
Tell me where the funny part was.
Well, because one of the things that I thought was interesting was that you started talking about technology. I went and I looked up the very first time you mentioned tech in 1985 in the Miami Herald. You said, to better understand why you need a personal computer, let's take a look at the pathetic mess that you call your life.
I'm sure I said that in 1985, which, just for the record, was 40 years ago.
But in that case there, it was about being disorganized. It was about being completely unorganized, and the computer is starting to organize your life. And now we're in a world here where AI and things are going to start hopefully making us more creative. But even though it might not be initially funny, I still think it's important to look at someone who has created dozens of books over a huge amount of time. And
Without AI.
Without AI.
So far. People, when AI started, first couple of years ago, burst upon the scene and everything, I got at least 100 emails from friends and other people I didn't even know saying, I asked AI to write a humor column, Dave Barry style. I got that same over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And all of them sucked. So for now, I don't care if AI really ruins the whole of human civilization, as long as it can't do humor, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, you're totally cool with that.
Yeah.
Now, the book came out, though.
It did.
And how long until the AI book came out?
About the same day.
Okay.
On Amazon, there was a book right after mine that said Class Clown and Dave Barry, but it was entirely written by AI. So that was quick.
Yeah. So, however, though, when you go to Google and you type is Dave Barry,
dead is the immediate.
It says, is Dave Barry still alive?
Okay.
Yeah, Bing says dead, and Google says still alive.
Okay, well.
So either way, you're not looking good.
No, yeah. I sometimes wonder myself, but yeah.
Yeah, you have entire sections of your book.
It does, though. I just want to say that, I'm 77 years old. There is an advantage to that, which is you have a perspective that you don't have when you're younger. Like when people say, well, if we don't take better care of the planet, within 25 years, human civilization will cease to exist. Like if you're a young person, you think that sounds bad. If you're my age, 77, you go 25 years, I can live with that.
So I'm glad that you're
that's the
playing
advantage.
the long con.
The advantage of being old.
The long con. And you've actually talked about age for a while because you had a book called Dave Barry Turns 40 and then turns 50. There wasn't a 60?
I gave up because
you gave up?
Yeah, I just kept turning.
And you went for 77 rather than waiting for 80.
Well, I don't know how much time I have left, to be honest, Scott. So, yeah.
And then you have an entire.
I'm talking about in this interview.
Yeah. No, we'll get you out of here hopefully before Google updates their index. But I'm starting. The reason I ask is I'm starting to feel my own age, and you have a whole section here in the book where you talk about how you have multiple heart doctors that talk to each other about your heart.
I have many. How
many doctors are making this happen?
Many, just multiple doctors. But it's not because I'm sick. It's just because every time you go to a doctor, they refer to you to another. When you're old, they refer you to another doctor, and then you can never stop going to that doctor. So I have a whole softball team I could make of doctors.
This one here, I was looking at I'm on page 230. I made it that far, and this heart doctor, second heart doctor, kidney doctor. They all talk to each other, follow up with each other. But you said that you're approaching them like you talk to a mafia boss. You just say no.
Yeah, I yield nothing. They say like,
So you're not actually helping your doctors keep you around.
oh, because they'll just order tests. Like, I feel fine. The blood coming out of my ear, that's normal.
I told my dad that I was going to be talking to you, and he was pretty excited because he and I used to read your column in like 84, 85, 86 in the Oregonian.
Yeah.
In the Oregonian. And you said that there was a time when you had 500 local newspapers that were all syndicating your stuff.
Yeah.
You just give them the column and then they just print it straight?
We use electricity to get it to them.
Yeah, we're getting that soon.
Are you guys familiar
Oregon.
with this? We could send it to them using electricity.
Yeah.
And that's how they got it. We didn't actually give it to them physically, no.
No? You didn't walk it to them?
No.
No faxing?
No.
Okay. Would they print it exactly as you handed it to
Not
them?
always. Sometimes they would surgically remove all the punchlines, the editors. Yeah, I had issues, we have that many people editing you, they're going to be a problem. But the people I had the most editors weren't so bad. The readers, not all I loved my readers. I had a lot of readers. I had literally at some point, like probably millions of readers. And most of them were wonderful to me. Most of them, I got a lot of ideas for columns from them. But in a way, the readers I loved the most were the ones who hated me, because I got, in a way, more material from them than, like, for example, I put it in the book. There's my favorite single piece of mail. It's a postcard I got, and it's just a postcard with big block letters. This was in response to a column I wrote about Christmas carols that I don't like. And the postcard just says, I haven't read one of your columns since you shit on the little drummer boy, and never will. And just for the record, I'm not a big fan of that particular Christmas Carol, because for one thing, it goes on as long as dental school. But another thing, the premise of it bothers me. If you have a newborn infant, the last thing you need is a kid with a drum coming in. So anyway, but that one, the one that got the column I wrote that riled the readers up probably more than any other, and it resulted in a whole new area of writing for me. Was I wrote a column about, and this wasn't even the point of this column, but it mentioned in there, and before I say this, I want to stress that I think Neil Diamond is a tremendous talent, okay? But I wrote that maybe Neil Diamond could have done a little better with the lyric of the song that goes, I said, to no one there, and no one heard it all, not even the chair. My feeling about that was like, no kidding, Neil, because that's a piece of furniture. Probably the table didn't pick up on it either. But I got, in response to that, probably, 1,000 maybe letters from Neil Diamond fans who were very passionate, furious at me, like, how dare you criticize this genius? And so I wrote, that was an inspiration. I wrote a whole new column about the Neil Diamond people being mad at me. And that got a whole bunch more mail from people who were on my team, who didn't, also agreed with me about that, and had other songs they wanted to talk about that they didn't like. And it went on for weeks, and I ended up writing a book about it, songs people hate, which people still come up and talk to me about songs they hate, like some.
You actually got a ton of, you said you had thousands of Mr. Barry, You're an Idiot.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet Caroline, they wanted to make sure that you knew Sweet Caroline
existed. It was a genius song, brilliant song, yes.
Right. How many great songs have you written?
Zero.
Mr. Barry?
That's the thing. Yeah. They got me there. They got me there.
Yeah. Similar to my Pulitzer.
Yeah.
You have no talent, which is why you're jealous of Neil Diamond.
Of Neil Diamond. Yeah. That's exactly it. That's my.
And then there was some more thoughtful criticism, which I think is reasonable, like you stupid idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. I once, since we're talking about reader criticism and states that get picked on. I once wrote a column. It was about somebody tried to rank states in order of stupidity, which is the most stupid state. And I wrote a column objecting to it. I live in Florida, and I felt that we should have been number one. Florida, you can't spell it without duh. But I also talked about some other states that maybe were, qualified as not that bright. And I happen to mention, among them, there were like 4 or 5 of them. One of them was Indiana. And it was not a big deal. I just said, Indiana they call themselves Hoosiers, and nobody can explain what that word means. For all we know, it's a Native American word meaning has sex with caribou. So, and it was just whatever, joke, throwaway. The other states were fine with it. The Indiana people were very defensive, and I got a couple of hundred letters all saying essentially the same thing. You idiot. Everybody knows what Hoosier is. And then they had like 203 different explanations of what Hoosier is. Nobody, but my favorite of all those was the guy who said, "For your information, Mr. Barry, there are no caribou in Indiana." So got me, showed me.
That is a crucial clarification. Hey, friends, we're going to take a moment and hear from our new sponsor, ShareGate at sharegate.com. I'm chatting with Shaylin Gimby. Shaylin, I've been thinking about moving my Google Suite over to M365, and, the migrations, they're like pulling teeth. What are the biggest headaches that IT teams will run into, and why does it take so long?
It's funny. I find that IT admins always think migrations seem really complicated, but truthfully, if you do the planning really well, it can be smooth sailing. It all starts with planning. You need to figure out the scope, set realistic timelines, and take inventory of permissions. If you don't do that up front, you're kind of setting yourself up for delays and potential security risks down the line. The reality is a lot of these migrations involve huge amounts of sensitive data. So rushing isn't an option. And then there's also the Microsoft side. Microsoft enforces some throttling limits to manage traffic, which can slow things down even more. That's where we come in. We help IT teams get ahead of those roadblocks with ready-made reports like our site report, lays out everything in your environment, or source analysis, which estimates how much effort your migration will actually take. And to get around throttling, well, our customers can utilize concurrent migrations with ShareGate Pro. It allows them to accelerate their migration.
Very cool. That is ShareGate by WorkLeap. It's one tool to migrate faster and secure your tenant. It's an out-of-the-box Microsoft 365 migration and governance tool that you can learn all about at sharegate.com. Thanks a lot for being a sponsor. So I'm trying to get my timeline here, though. Did you go on the Carson show, on the Johnny Carson show, before you were syndicated?
Yeah, it was. This was like my first book. I think with the second book, way back.
Yeah,
I was
84.
Extremely obscure humor writer, and I had a book called The Taming of the Screw, which was a parody of do-it-yourself manuals. A little book, and I had been on one TV show in Philadelphia, a local TV show that nobody watched. I don't even think the cameraman was watching while I'm on it. Somehow a tape of that got into the hands of a booker for The Tonight Show. This is in 1985 or 6, when Johnny Carson that was the biggest show in America. And they used to still have authors on late night talk shows. But he was huge. And so I get this call from this woman named Shirley Wood, who was like this hard-bitten gal. And she goes, I got your book. Your book is funny. Are you funny? And I'm like, she was a smoker. And and she says, interviews me over the phone. And not once does she laugh. She goes like, no. Okay. No. Like that. That's all I got from Shirley. But she booked me on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. So they flew me I lived in suburban Philadelphia then, flew me from there to LA, picked me up in a limo. I'd never been in a limo in my life. Take me to the hotel, then take me to the studio. At the studio, there's all these people, and then there's dressing rooms with stars on them. And it's like Dick Cavett, the Pointer Sisters, Dave Barry, and they put me in there I didn't need a dressing room. I was wearing the clothes that I wore on the plane to be on the show. And then Shirley Wood comes in and she takes me out. There's a bar backstage and gets me a water glass full of wine and says, drink this, and then she's giving me a piece of paper with the questions she'd asked me over the phone and the answers I'd given her. And then an hour later, I'm on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And it went great. He was very good at his job, Johnny Carson. And I thought, this is easy, television, not realizing that it would never be that good again. And then at the end of the show, we go on and he's set me up for all the laughs, the audience laughs, just great. And then it ends. I'm the last guy. The show ends. The camera, the red light goes off, and Johnny Carson lights a cigarette, turns to me. This is the only interaction I had with him off the air. Remember, it's a do-it-yourself book. And he goes, I used to do it yourself. You can't do shit yourself. That was my Johnny Carson moment.
And you said that people ask you, like, what's he like? What's he like?
What's he like? I don't know what he's like. He's really good at being Johnny Carson, I'll tell you that. But we didn't, he didn't ever reveal to me what he was like. We just talked, that was it.
So that's an example of hanging out with, like, some superstar for 7 minutes. You got to hang out with him. But you got to hang out backstage at the Oscars because Steve Martin emailed you?
Yeah, Steve Martin.
Did you say, like, email you from AOL? Or
no.
What is Steve Martin's email address?
I'm not going to tell you Steve Martin's email address, but yeah, Steve Martin turned out this is in 2003. Mm-hmm. Was a fan of my writing, and I didn't know this, but he emailed me and said, I'm going to be hosting the Oscars. I want you to come out and be one of the writers. So I did that. It was very cool. I got to be, I flew out to LA like 5 times to write jokes with the joke writing team. And then the night of the Oscars backstage, which was really fun, watching all the movie stars go by. And I don't know, it was great. Thank you.
So did you go front of the Oscars, or were you always backstage?
Oh, no, I've never.
The whole time you're just backstage?
Yeah, but you have to wear a...
You wear a tuxedo
You
backstage?
do wear a tuxedo, even backstage. And try not to, like, gape.
Yeah.
I'm standing right next to Halle Berry, but I'm not gaping,
I just wonder what it's like to be in that strata, because
you're never going to find out, are you, Scott?
No, this is as close as I'm getting. What is it like to be a well-known author who is not Stephen King?
Well, I'm in a rock band with Stephen King, so Stephen is a friend of mine, and this band it's called the Rock Bottom Remainders, it's Stephen King, Amy Tan, Scott Turow, Mitch Albom, Ridley Pearson, Greg Iles, Mary Carr, Allen, bunch of good authors, but we suck as a band. We play, Roy Blunt Jr., one of our members, describes our genre as hard listening music.
Is that just done in a garage? Is this like a garage band?
Well, we're much worse than that. More like a carport. Not even really that good. But we were supposed to only play one night. This was back in 1992 for the American Booksellers Association convention. And it was going to be just that. And it was so much fun, as Amy Tan put it afterward, I would do this to kill the whales. Just for the record, we have never killed a whale that I'm aware of.
That you know of. Yeah.
That I know of. They don't listen to us. That's the reason. But anyway, it was so much fun that we kind of stuck together. And like I say, we're not so good at music. We're really good at endurance. We have endured longer than, like, for example, the Beatles, to name a band that's was pretty good. But did they endure? No, we did.
No Pulitzers on the Beatles.
So we're still playing. We played in November, and yeah.
That's awesome. I mentioned before about the turning different ages. When you turned 50, you made a list.
People do turn different ages. That's what happens.
Yeah, it's
kind of the way it works. In fact, almost every year you'll find you'll turn a different age.
Yeah, it's monotonic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I turned 50 a couple of years back, and when you turned 50, you had a list of 25 things you'd learned at that point. Just 25.
Well, how many things have you learned, Scott? I mean,
I've learned that Dave Barry's not as nice as he is in the book.
Yeah, well, true.
It says here, a person who is nice to you but rude to the waiter is not a nice person.
Yeah. But it's different if, like, I'm being rude to you, but I'm really nice to waiters, so. Yeah.
I want to be a waiter now, so you'll be nice to me. And you also called out that there's a fine line between hobby and mental illness.
Yes.
Where do you put the band in that?
Definitely mental illness.
Yeah?
I mean, nobody really is asking us to play, and we're still playing. So, yeah.
Do you think that you're going to do a book at 80 and a book at 100?
No.
Are you done?
This is it.
This is the book?
Yeah.
Seriously?
I don't know. But I mean, I just wrote this book, so I don't really, I'm still out talking about this book. So I
But why? Like, why?
Why am I talking
No,
about?
no. Why do you have a book?
What book would you like to talk about?
When you make a book, when you write a book,
We can
is
talk
it
about
because
Moby Dick, but I didn't write that.
what I'm saying is that when you write a book, is it because it's like in you? Like, do you walking around just like, I think I have another book in me, and I got to get it out? What causes that to like?
Well, yeah,
manifest?
writers write. I mean, that's what you do. I don't have a useful skill, so that's what I do. And I was a little nervous. This was a different kind of book for me because usually I write just humor book, which is joke, trying to entertain you. And this is more, well, it's I hope entertaining, but it's also more about me. And parts of it are pretty serious part, and almost sad. But my editor and my agent said, memoirs, people like memoirs. Why don't you write a memoir? And I resisted it for a long time because I was like, well, who cares, But I find it, and when I was writing, it was a little intimidating because, like they said, memoirs are big. Like, for example, Barbara Streisand wrote a 970-page memoir, which was big. It was a big seller when I was writing this book. And I'm thinking, like, Barbara Streisand's really, really famous. I'm not even close. Like, she has a part of her book where she says, which I mentioned, I think, in the beginning of this. She said she's describing. She's got her book is completely full of famous people that she's interacted with all the way. And she said she's on the phone with Warren Beatty, and she hangs up and she goes, "I was wondering, did I sleep with Warren? Hard to remember. Maybe once." I'm thinking, like, I cannot compete with that. Like, I know for a fact I've never slept with Warren Beatty. Whatever you may hear from him, okay? Let's set that rumor to rest right now about me and Warren.
When you were thinking about writing the memoir, you were being encouraged to write the memoir. There were questions like, why would anyone read this, and who would care?
Correct.
Those were questions from your
my wife. Yeah. No, she encouraged me, but that's her job. So
yeah. She's a writer as well.
She's a sports writer. Yeah, my wife is a sports writer, and she's she routinely goes into rooms full of naked men, but she assures me that she doesn't look, and that they don't measure up to me, and I believe her. No.
As two writers in the same house, do you sit back to back with two typewriters?
We do. Well, we don't use typewriters, guys. Okay.
Right.
We have computers in Miami. No.
We'll get them in Oregon soon.
Yeah. We do. We sit in the same room opposite each other, and every now and then I'll show her my screen from across the room and say, "Do you think this is funny?" And she always says yes, even though I know she can't actually read it. So it's very supportive in that respect,
You started doing these things called ad libs. I wanted to go back to the very beginning. There was, you weren't trying to be a humorist. Certainly no one I hope would ever choose to do this, right? Like, this would not be a thing you would orchestrate.
This particular thing?
Yeah.
You mean like right now?
Yeah, like this moment right now, I feel like was poorly orchestrated.
No.
But what were ad libs, and where you submitted humor to?
When I got out of college, my first real writing job was at a little newspaper in Pennsylvania called the Daily Local News, which was very local, and I was not there hired to write humor.
Right.
I was hired to be I did obituaries, and I was a general assignment reporter. Obituaries, fires, police reports. I covered incredibly dull municipal meetings, some of which are probably still going on. And I would write these long stories about what the Downingtown Regional Sewage Authority had done, which I'm sure nobody read.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I read them. I just wrote them, But then on the side, because it was a little paper, you could do different things. I learned a lot in that job because you do everything at a little paper. And they would let you write little essays. They called them op-eds. They were op-eds. They called them ad libs. And I would write a humor one. At least I thought it was funny. And that was sort of the beginning of when I started writing columns. But I didn't think that was going to be my career. I didn't. That was in the 70s, and like Art Buchwald was the giant, Irma Bombeck, people like that. And I didn't ever imagine doing that, full time. And it was not until I was in my 30s that I actually was able to do it full time.
When you were younger, and I guess you were doing accounting and things that weren't less glamorous. Were you a Wiseass? You were the class clown?
I was always a Wiseass. I was actually elected class clown of my high school, Pleasantville High School class of 1965, and that was a fair election, whatever you may have heard. But I was a wise ass all through school. I was
Yeah.
a little kid who didn't even, I wasn't good at sports or anything. I entertained my classmates by making jokes, even when it was not really appropriate. It was kind of a discipline problem. But I was told by more than one teacher, that's very funny, David, but you can't joke your way through life, which turns out to be inaccurate. You can, in fact, joke your way through life.
When you're just hanging out, do you ever have people try to get you to be on? Like if you're at Starbucks and you're just like, hey, tell me a joke.
Well, people if they know if they know who I am and they're familiar with sometimes people will be like, expecting.
Yeah, like me.
Like you, yeah.
And find themselves
But it'll be in a
disappointed.
supermarket. And well, this has not been, a walk in the park for me either, Scott. So, they'll like, if people expect you to be funny, then everything you say, they'll say, so, what are you doing here? And I'm at the supermarket. I'm like, well, I'm shopping for granola. Like that was. And it's embarrassing because that was not funny, but I've got to pretend that was a witty thing I said, anyway.
I'm going to pretend like that was a witty thing.
Okay, do your best.
Enjoy your box of water. We were talking about what you wanted to drink, and we were worried that the box of water wasn't fancy enough, and maybe you would want to.
Yeah, then this is good water.
Yeah,
here.
It's right out of the tap. We refilled these because we do that in Oregon. So Dave Barry's memoir of a professional wise-ass class clown is available. Everybody in the room gets one. I enjoyed most of it, and and it's fun to have you here, and we're going to be able to spend a little bit more time.
This honestly is the highlight of my life to date. So thank you.
Yeah, well, it's only going to get better.
It can't get better. Can't get better from here. I'm going to kill myself immediately just to make sure that nothing else happens to me after this, because I want to treasure this forever. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for hanging out. Let's give a big hand for Dave Barry.
And let's applaud Scott because he came all the way from Oregon to do this.
I love that you explicitly said Oregon just to be mean.
That's right. You say Oregon, right?
Oregon. Yeah. I don't know why. We just do to be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Oregon, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Like
this
your
is
spleen.
Like your spleen?
Well, it's an organ. I'm thinking of or never mind. Pancreas.
It's okay. We can always end on a low. If you want to.
I have a pretty great spleen story. You want to hear my spleen?
Let's end on the spleen story. Everyone want to hear the spleen story?
Okay.
All right, we'll end on the spleen.
This is my only spleen story, but I think it's worthwhile. Okay, it's this band I'm in, the Remainders. We have been told that other bands rehearse the songs ahead of time. That's their secret. And we don't do that. We usually play a show and then we go, we should have rehearsed those songs ahead of time, So anyway, but we don't. So we just go to a bar. So anyway, we had played a show in New York City, and we went to a bar, at the hotel bar, and I had too many vodka gimlets. I'm just going to admit it. It was not my fault. People were buying them for me, but I did drink them. So I had maybe 3 or 4 too many vodka gimlets at some point. And I'm sitting in between two authors that I really like. Roy Blunt Jr. is one of the funniest people I know, and Scott Turow is a brilliant, great guy. And I'm sitting between them in my vodka gimlet haze, trying to follow two conversations. And Scott's was this long, complicated story about his spleen. And I keep interrupting him because I'm having trouble following and I'm getting distracted by Roy. And I keep saying, wait a minute, do you have a spleen or not? Because the story, it wasn't clear the way he was telling it, at least not to me, but I did have a lot of vodka gimlets. And he says, no, I don't have a spleen. That's the point. And then a little later, I got confused. He goes, wait a minute. I thought you said you don't have a spleen. No, I don't have a spleen. So the third time I interrupt him about that, and he's a really nice man. He pulls up my sleeve, takes a Sharpie and writes, no spleen on my forearm in big letters. And that solved the problem for the evening. So then we go to bed. Only Scott and me, but everybody went to bed. Then we had to get up really early the next morning because we were going to do a show in Boston. We had to take the train. So I get up in my hotel bedroom and hotel room, and I don't remember much about the night before. I'm walking toward the bathroom and I look down. I look in the mirror and I see something's written on my arm, and I look down and it says "no spleen," and I have no memory of why that's there. And you know that urban legend of the guy, the salesman, and he's in a bar in a hotel, and a hot babe slips him a Mickey, and he wakes up the next morning in the bathtub, packed in ice, wearing it, and he's got somebody's put a note on his chest that says, "We have harvested one of your kidneys. Here's what you need to do." So for just a few horrible seconds in that New York hotel room, I think, "Oh my God, they've harvested my spleen." And then as my brain starts to reboot, I'm thinking like, no, they didn't. Like, you don't even need a spleen. That was the whole point of Scott's story. Like, there's probably just saying in organ harvesting circles, he's so stupid he'd harvest a spleen. Anyway, so the moral of that story is go easy on the vodka gimlets. But that's my spleen story. So I had to get that in here. Hey.
All right. Well, thank you, friends, for spending time with us at Outside In. And again, big hand to Dave Barry for writing books over so many years and for making us laugh. We appreciate you, though.
Thank you. Thanks.